Tatooine, a planet so scorched by its binary parent stars that water on the surface is considered a delicacy. A planet called home by an extremely diverse range of factions, aliens and criminal syndicates who seek to exploit its weak and desperate populace. That's the Tatooine we all know and love, and today we are going to talk about it. Feel free to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy Galactic Empire or Star Wars content, and feel free to share this video to show your allegiance to the Empire. And without further ado, let's look into the Outer Rim world of Tatooine. Located in the Outer Rim region of the galactic map, Tatooine is a backwater world, discarded by the rest of the galaxy. A planet teeming with criminals, smugglers, bounty hunters, slimy corrupt huts, and beings so morally deficient that it makes Coruscant's lower levels look like the inside of a Jedi meditation chamber. A wretched hive of scum and villainy, some might say. But what you may not know is that this little backwater world is responsible for influencing major galactic events in recent history. With that, we shall take a brief look at Tatooine's history, its traits, features and characteristics as a planet, and lastly how it is affected by the Galactic Empire. Formed sometime when the galaxy was in its infancy, Tatooine, believe it or not, was not always the way we see it today. In fact, its surface was once covered in dense jungles and sprawling oceans, which may be one factor which contributes as to why moisture farming is so prominent on Tatooine. Besides that, as the planet progressed through the ages, something happened to Tatooine's biosphere, causing the planet to become that all too familiar desert world we know today. It is unknown what happened to Tatooine that caused this to happen, but the planet's surface has remained the same ever since. Tatooine would later gain its meek and pathetic population through a series of unsuccessful colonization campaigns, which left early off-world settlers scattered in small colonies throughout the arid dunes and valleys of the planet's surface. Of course, by the time this was taking place, Tatooine was already home to the mischievous but negotiable Jawas, and the ruthless but hardy Tusken Raiders, not to mention the small but dangerous ecosystem of animals that could eat walkers for breakfast. Either way, continuing on, these settlements would eventually become the many towns, cities and villages that reside on Tatooine, the planet's populace slowly increasing over the years to include those who would wish to exploit the poor and weak of Tatooine. The planet, of course, as said before, is located within the Outer Rim, far away from any of the wealth, infrastructure and economy of the core and inner rim, orbiting around its twin parent binary stars, Tatoo 1 and 2, with Tatooine itself being orbited by 3 moons, Gormasan, Gormesa and Chinini. Nothing particularly special about these. Now, it's no secret at this point in the video that Tatooine is a hot, dry and rather unforgiving world to live on. But believe it or not, it does rain from time to time on Tatooine, taking either a year, a decade or a century, which means while it does rain, it's not happening anytime soon. This is slightly ironic, because water plays a prominent role in the Tatooine lifestyle, with moisture farming being a vital means of survival for the planet's inhabitants. Moisture farming, to put quite simply, involves extracting moisture from the dry air and atmosphere of Tatooine and condensing it into water, which can be sold or used to survive. If you visit Tatooine anytime soon, you can find these small moisture farms dotted all across the surface, with these people usually trying their best to provide for themselves and their families. But this of course all depends on how a harvest goes. Speaking of the people, Tatooine has an absolutely pathetic population count of 200,000. It's fair to say that Tatooine isn't exactly the hottest destination in the galaxy to visit as of this moment. So the people, what are they like? Well, for a start, as we just discussed, Tatooine's populace often has to struggle to survive the harsh waste and empty deserts, but that doesn't mean that they can't live a semi-normal life. Along with moisture farms and small settlements, Tatooine is dotted with several cities, I guess you could say, not being that big at least when compared to the other cities of the galaxy. They act as hubs and planet-wide gathering points for what little semblance of an economy Tatooine has, places where trade is fairly common, with the Jawas routinely arriving to sell scraps and junk to the inhabitant. Anyway, enough with all this boring stuff. What do people do for fun, you may ask? Well, for a start, pod racing is a particularly popular sporting event which many Tatooine citizens enjoy. The high-speed thrills and dangers of these events certainly take one away from the mundane of everyday life on Tatooine. Gambling is also a fairly big moneymaker on Tatooine, as well as a whole host of criminal activities that certainly contributes for a far more interesting lifestyle than moisture farming, that's for sure. You also have hunting, which is another great activity one can participate in out on the desert, hunting bantha, Jawas, Tuskens, Sarlaccs, Ronto, and the most revered of which, the Krayt Dragon. But even then, with those activities available, living on Tatooine is extremely difficult, and the factions that exploit its populace is certainly of no help at all. Come the Galactic Civil War, the Empire took an interest in Tatooine, with suspected rebel activity taking place on the surface and throughout the many cities and settlements of the planet. For example, after the Battle of Scarif, supposed diplomat of the Imperial Senate and supposed leader of the Rebel Alliance, Princess Leia Organa, had put the schematic plans of the first Death Star into an R-Series droid unit which utilised an escape pod to land on the planet of Tatooine to escape Imperial forces. What followed was a planet-wide sweep of Tatooine by the Imperial Armada, searching for the droid and its companion. This also marks the beginning of the legacy of the famous rebel hero Luke Skywalker, who was supposedly born on Tatooine and lived there growing up, before eventually deciding to become a rebel and blow up the Death Star because clearly the moisture farming life wasn't good enough for him, was it? Anyway, as the Civil War continued, like the rest of the galaxy, the Empire's grip on Tatooine tightened as a result of this suspected rebel presence. But, if you think about it, Tatooine is one planet you want to keep an eye on. For one, it's practically perfect for rebel cells and guerrilla fighters to crop up on. With such a minimal population and so much surface area to stick a base, hangar or fortress on, the Empire wouldn't be out of the right mind to secure the planet. And secure it we did, with TIE fighters, shuttles and Star Destroyers continuously arriving and departing from Tatooine to resupply and check up on the locals to make sure that they're not up to anything associated with the Rebel Alliance. As far as I'm aware, no permanent military structures and bases were constructed on Tatooine by the Empire. It was and still is only patrols and platoons, which are a common sight throughout the settlements, towns and cities of Tatooine. The Empire's presence on Tatooine has not only been an occupational endeavour, but a criminal one as well, with a significant rise in crime throughout the cities of Tatooine. Most notably, the crime lord Jabba the Hutt, whose reign over the populace of the planet was significantly strengthened when Lord Vader himself negotiated with the Hutt for the supply of resources to the Empire for the Imperial war machine, as per the Emperor's request. And yes, Vader did not go about those negotiations subtly. So while Jabba's reign over Tatooine has strengthened, so too has the various crime groups that operate both in and out of the planet's settlements. Groups like the Bounty Hunters Guild have a large influence throughout these major cities, hunting wanted individuals and even those not so deserving, and that is only the tip of the iceberg. Let's not forget to mention the spice runners, smugglers, crime lords, illegal arms dealers and slave traders, separatists, Sith, Jedi, spice dealers, pirates, scavengers, mercenaries, rebels, Imperial deserters. You know what? You get the idea. But the point still stands. With the Empire's presence and increased activity on Tatooine, the crime increases as well alongside it, as there are credits to be made with the outlaw and lack of sufficient materials. So what about the people? You know, the slaves and workers who make up the majority of Tatooine's population. Well, they get the worst of it. The Empire has little regard for the squabbles of the common folk, which makes life on Tatooine all the more difficult, which, for the future of civilization on Tatooine, isn't very good at all. But, with that, I think you now have a fairly basic understanding of how Tatooine is affected by the presence of the Galactic Empire. Thanks for watching, long live the Empire, and may the Force be with you.